Happy Friday and welcome to Career Launch Live. I am your host, Catherine McCord, and I am excited about today's topic because it's something that we've all struggled with at some point, right? Like, who wants to work with the person that they don't like? But you have to. So how do you do that successfully? I have a great guest with me today. I actually have had the privilege of being on a show with him before. It's actually his show. It was wonderful. He's a brilliant, brilliant human from the UK. So we're going to have an international perspective on this one, which is fantastic. So without any further ado, let's bring on David Hatch. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I could not be more excited about this topic because it's been relevant to me lately. I've had people reaching out and talking to me about these issues. And so I'm like, okay, this is a discussion that needs to be had. Like, here we are, right? So talk to first, and David, can you introduce yourself a little bit better than what I did?
I'll try. Okay, my name's David. I actually watching the little intro with the countdown there with the rockets is very cool because I spent some time in the space industry, so I always love to see videos of rockets and stuff. That's always very cool.
Cool.
Nice little connection there. So I spent 15-odd year career in aerospace and the space sector. A whole bunch of different experiences, including something maybe relevant to what we're talking about today. But I guess my biggest lessons that I took away from it were about leadership and the importance of that, the impact it can have on people. You know, we spend so much time at work. I don't know what the percentage is. It's a high percentage of our lives at work, isn't it? And so if that's unbearable for whatever reason, it's horrible experience, isn't it? It ruins your life. Or the opposite. A great leader can make a difference. They can make your life better. So that's what I'm all about now.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. And we talk about the importance of leadership a lot on this show. We're going to talk about it, obviously, today as part of this conversation, because sometimes you have to lead people through this, right? It's like, it's not easy, learning to work with people that suck. Or that you just don't get along with, right? Maybe
diplomatic phrasing there. Well done. Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe seriously, maybe they don't suck. Maybe it's just that you just don't get along with them. You know what I mean? And that's okay. That happens, right? So let's talk about what it's like. So a story about when you didn't get along with somebody, or you had to help somebody who didn't get along with somebody.
Yeah, I'll try. Yeah,
I know. I mean, imagine you not getting along with someone. Can I just say that? Like,
thank you.
I was thinking about this, I was like, oh, who wouldn't like David? Maybe he doesn't like other people. No, he's too nice for that. Like, I was like, maybe we'll see what happens.
Don't know about that. I get along with it with everyone. It's other people who don't get along with me. That's the trouble.
See, that's exactly my point. Yeah. But let's tell the story. What do you got?
Yeah. I mean, look, as you say, work is tough. We don't always get to choose who we work with, and so having that skill, or I guess mindset sometimes as well, to be able to cope with that situation, whether it's someone that you don't get on with, maybe it's a personality clash, maybe it's just different ways of working and they're not compatible, and you've got to find a way to, despite the way of the world these days, and I'll stay off the social media soapbox. Disagreeing with someone doesn't mean you have to hate them, right? You don't have to you can still be friends, you can still like someone and disagree with what they're about or the way they do something, or whatever it might be. So I think that's kind of the first thing to bear in mind, is everyone is different. You've got to apply a bit of empathy, haven't you? And sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying, I agree. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it, is that you have to be able to kind of understand, right? And understand that it's okay that they're different. Now, what's not okay, where the barrier is if they try to inflict on you their way, or inflict on you their beliefs, those kinds of things. That's where it's different. So inclusion is not infliction. And so what we're talking about is you want to be inclusive of people's differences and embrace them as much as possible, because that's what makes the world go round, right? And political differences are not ethical differences too. So I want to also kind of hit on that. Just because somebody votes differently than you may not mean that there's Satan incarnate. So and it can be, they can be, like, they can be, right? Those things can be fine. And so here we go. This is a good topic. I was going to dive into this. Yeah, it says, I'm neurodiverse, so work very differently. And in previous roles, wow, my way or the highway. Yeah. So I want to hit on that first because I know like you've done a lot of great, talking about leadership and working with people who may be a little bit different than you, things like that. So it's hard for some people who just need to work differently, right? And Hewlett Packard even had a whole department, or has, excuse me, a whole department that is designed that way, and it's massively productive. It's had excellent success. So, what are your thoughts on helping leaders understand not to be a jerk and let that ego defense get in the way when somebody just needs to think a little bit differently than you?
Yeah, so I think the starting point for me is it's about, I mean, that my way or the highway is the antithesis of my kind of leadership. I'll just get that out there straight away. I think it's about how you start that relationship as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's that saying, isn't there, about treat someone how you would want to be treated. And I know we've talked about this in the past, Catherine. Actually, what it should be is treat them how they want to be treated, right? And the only
Yes.
way you're going to know that is if you ask them. So
Yes.
have that conversation as early as you can in your leadership journey. It doesn't have to be from a leadership perspective either. If there's somebody that you may be butting heads with at work, maybe open that conversation if you're brave
Yeah.
enough and willing enough. See where it goes. You never know. You might learn something about the other person, about yourself. You might end up having a much better working relationship as a result of that. But
Yes.
that's really where I think you've got to come from to start with, is understanding what's working for them, applying that empathy that I mentioned earlier, understanding why it is they're doing things the way they are doing them, why they're doing what they're doing, maybe the knee-jerk reaction that a lot of us will have to something that we disagree with, maybe that's not serving you. So get a bit
Right.
deeper into it, find out the logic, the reasoning, the emotions behind it, and
Yes.
maybe then you can start to empathize, sympathize, and change your own behavior, and everyone wins then.
And maybe they'll learn about you. Like maybe once you
Exactly.
start the conversation, they'll listen to you. So it's, and as a leader, though, one thing that really drives me crazy is when people forget to lead from a servant's perspective, right? Because your whole job is to take care of the humans. And so if you're missing that mark, you're just missing the point altogether. But as an employee, dealing with a leader that won't do that, that can just be devastating. So real quick, before we dive into the rest of the relationship building aspect that I'm just dying to dive into with you, in fact, you touched on something that I really want to hit on in just a second. How would you, if you're the employee and you're like, look, I just need this to be able to work successfully. Like, it's not that I'm trying to be your BFF. I just need this to be able to work successfully. And the leader's just not listening. What steps would you recommend to dealing with a jerk leader?
It's interesting. This is not the first time I've had this question this week.
Oh,
So it must be a
it's a
common
prevalent
topic.
issue.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
prevalent
clearly.
issue.
I mean, this is where I start to feel slight imposter syndrome myself, because when I was in that situation, rather than deal with it, I chose to leave and went and found something else that was better for me.
But that's an okay solution.
It's an okay solution. It's not always the best one, and well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just overly sensitive because that's what I did. But it feels like I avoided the problem rather than dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were to do it over again in that kind of situation, I think what I would start with is, again, it's have a conversation. And it doesn't have to be confrontational. You don't have to go into it
Right.
and say, "Oi, boss, what you're doing is rubbish. Stop it." You could just say, this way of working isn't working for me. It's my
Yeah.
issue, but it would really help me if you could. Dot dot dot.
XYZ. Yeah.
Yeah. And you might be surprised. I think something else worth remembering. There's exceptions to this rule, but I think the vast majority of jerk bosses, they're not doing it to be jerks. They're not doing it
That's true.
because they're horrible people. They're doing it because either it's the way they've been taught to do it, or it's the
Mhm.
way they think you're supposed to be when you're
Yeah.
in charge of people. So they might just not know any better. They might not realize the impact it's having unless you tell them.
That's true. That's true. And it sounds kind of silly, but it's true. It seems like, well, shouldn't it be obvious? Well, no, you don't know what you don't know. right? And
Exactly.
that's something that I've had to come to realize. And a lot of people also do not have the type of personality where they're constantly going out and trying to learn and trying to get new information. That's just not who they are. And so unless you bring it to them, which that's massively confusing for me because I just live to learn, right? But that's me. That's my normal. And so as you're dealing with the quote jerks, especially the jerk bosses, remember again that they may be different from you. So they may need a little bit of inclusion and understanding too, and also just education. Because especially with the neurodiverse community, I know because I'm in it, I study it, I teach about it, I get it. It's and a lot of people when they learn about it will click and go, oh yeah, okay, this makes total sense, but I didn't know this. I've had people come up to me after my talks and go, I feel like a jerk. I've been doing these things in my employees. I had no idea. Nobody told me. So very much to your point, tell them and in a nice way, just go, hey, just so you know, this is what I need to work. And you don't need to give them your diagnosis. Just say, this would help me work a lot better. This is kind of, how my mind works in general. This would help me to be a lot more effective. Then if they don't do it, then you've got a jerk boss. But up until then,
But at least then you know, right?
but at
And so
least
you
then
can
you
act
know.
accordingly.
Yes, yes, then you can move forward. Absolutely. And so the first thing too that I want to kind of use to dive back into the emotional aspect is learning to, and this is for both sides, whether you're the person who somebody's coming to you with something and you feel defensive, or whether you are trying to defend yourself from a very real problem, is breaking the ego defense and responding with curiosity, right? So the ego defense mechanism, for anybody who doesn't know, is that little part of your brain that needs to be right, which is biologic. That's there. It's something we all have to deal with. It's biological. But what happens is as you pass childhood, that becomes more of a hindrance than a help. And that's that little thing that as soon as somebody tells you you're wrong, or that you feel defensive, and your brain starts automatically throwing up reasons why it's right. Well, it's not. So so ask, so respond in curiosity. Just tell your brain, no, it's okay. We got this. We're gonna ask some questions about this. And respond with, okay, so tell me more about that. And even when it's something that's frustrating and when you're pretty sure that it's not gonna go a direction that's positive, still do that, because sometimes what you'll realize is it's not, whatever it is, it's not coming from a place of hate, it's coming from a point of ignorance or confusion, or it's not coming, or fear even. I've seen sometimes where somebody was just certain somebody was a jerk and discriminating, but it was fear based, right? um or it could just be, I just need to know, I just need to know these things. So what are some of your thoughts about using the ego defense, using breaking the ego defense and using curiosity as it relates to dealing with people that you can't stand in the workplace? Because even if it's not like they're persecuting you or being discriminatory, how else could you use it?
Yeah, I mean, that's partly why I would phrase that conversation in the way that I did. Because if you say, look, it's about me and my issue, how can you help me deal with that? You're immediately overcoming their ego defense because you're not saying there's a problem with them necessarily.
Right.
Now, maybe that feels uncomfortable or unpleasant, or you feel like you shouldn't be having to be the one taking on that responsibility. But at the same time, if you want to get to a solution, you've
Hmm.
got to open that door, haven't you? And there's no good just immediately going in and
You're a
I don't
jerk.
want. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say immediately going in and casting blame, but phrasing the conversation in a way that they might take it as that's what you're doing, and therefore immediately the defensive result happens.
Yeah.
And then from the other side of the conversation, if you're the one being approached, I think it's things that you've hit on already. So it's leadership skills that I see as core, but it's not just about leadership, is it? It's about any kind of conversation. So it's
Right.
things like that self awareness, the self reflection, recognizing what you don't know, what are your
Yes.
known knowns and your known unknowns, and all of that sort of thing, and your unknown unknowns, and all. Yeah, we could go on
Yeah.
for
And
hours
then
on that
so
one.
on and so forth, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Know
exactly.
thyself,
Yeah,
that's the thing. Know
yeah,
thyself.
exactly. And then as part of that, again, it's about learning, isn't it? So I think any effective leader, certainly one who's going to be effective over a long period of time, is one who's constantly learning. They have that open mind. They will never say the phrase, I know everything I need to know. And they just won't think that way. They'll always be looking to expand their knowledge, whether that is of leadership or the particular skill or working with certain types of people or changing
Whatever it
careers,
is.
whatever it
Yeah.
might be. But it's about having that open mind, that mindset, and being open to the possibility that you don't know everything, and therefore you might do
Oh,
something wrong
what a novel
occasionally.
concept. We don't know everything. Who
Yeah,
knew?
it's very anti-human, that, isn't it? And it's very difficult to do, and I think that's why so few people do it, and why these conversations get so angsty and uncomfortable.
They do, yeah, because we again, and it's back to that kind of ego mechanism that's built
Yeah.
into us inherently of, oh, I must be right. I must be the one that knows all the things, and you can't tell me I'm wrong. My beliefs are this. And let me just put this out there. If your belief system is so concrete that even when you're presented with evidence that you are wrong, you don't budge, you need to reevaluate. That is not one of the most brilliant pieces of advice I ever heard on that topic was from a ridiculous movie. It's called Dogma. It's on the Jay and Silent Bob,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
series of
I'm
yeah,
familiar.
you know what I'm
Love
talking
that
about.
film. Yeah.
Yes, it's great. And Chris Rock has a great line in that where he talks about it's not about having a belief, it's about having an idea and and kind of working with that because ideas are pliable, and that's kind of the difference is that you can grow an idea, right? You can evolve an idea, but a belief is like a core, like it's not going anywhere, and it's about kind of digging your foot into the sand and not moving. And so you want to, as a human, be flexible on that. But let's turn back and talk about, so you have this human, right? And they're not budging, they're just being a jerk. And let's say it's not the leader, it's just your coworker, right? They're just digging in and they are not going to back down and they just suck. But you've got to work with them anyway. Like there's just nothing to be done about this. You just have to deal with them. For instance, I once had a sales manager who was great at the peas and carrots of his job, right? Like that part he had down. Nightmare of a human to work with. I think there were maybe two people in that whole building that liked working with him. And it's not that he was a jerk, he just had jerk behavior. I don't think like his core being was a jerk. He just was just wrong in how he acted. Like I don't know what was with him. But so what I did, and I want to get your analysis of this situation. What I did was I only went to him when it was a professional conversation. Every single conversation was professional. And if he said something that was jerkish during that, I simply said, depending on what it was, let's say if it was something where he was kind of being dismissive, I would say keep it professional, please, and then just keep talking. In other words, I still set that boundary. I still stood up for myself. Because he would insult like my coworkers or whatever, like he didn't like my somebody that does something, what have you, or even his own people. I mean, like, well, they were just stupid, Why they do that? And so, so just kind of setting those boundaries and keeping everything professional, and then. But I think also to thank him and to let him know the time to appreciate it, because to me that was important. So when it could get the process and how it's about that maybe that he didn't have.
Yeah, no, I do like that. That is very important because when you get in your own head in these situations, it's very easy to just focus on the negatives and only tell them what you're not happy with. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, how frequently is there going to be a person who only does things you hate? I mean,
Right.
there's got to be at least like
Every
1 out
once
of
in a
10,
while.
right? But there's got to be like 1 out of every 10 things they do that you'll look at it and go, okay, you're right, that was fine. I didn't
Yeah.
mind that so much. So
Yeah.
focus on that as much, I think.
Yes.
And you might find that, again, as you suggest, it starts to improve the relationship over time if you start doing that. But yeah, ultimately, I guess the last resorts are walk away, find a new
That
job,
you
or
can. Yeah. And
both,
by the way, I do want to really honor to that. Yes, walking away and finding a new job is perfectly acceptable. That's the
Yeah, yeah.
perfectly acceptable thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, it would definitely be my last resort.
Well, yeah,
Well, it would
but
now, anyway.
well, part of it is too. Everywhere you go, you're not going to like somebody, right? That's just
Exactly.
part of life.
Yeah.
It just is what it. Now, of course, if they're too big of a jerk or they're actually like discriminating against you, that's different. That's not what I'm talking about.
True,
Then
yeah.
that's a whole other thing. Then you can go to HR. Then you can go to leadership. Then you can deal with them with litigate, whatever you want to do. You can deal with them. But it's when it's just that they just rub you wrong as a person. Like this sales manager, again, he wasn't like being a misogynist or like saying like weird things to me. He just and I really, honest to God, do not think he was an actual jerk. I just think he just did not know good communication skills, which is weird for a sales guy, but it was true. He just was not the best, communicator. Um, but what was interesting was when I set forth with this approach, it started working and I got more of the positive. When I thanked him for certain behaviors, people work on a consequences and reward system, right? Okay. So whether the consequence is positive or negative, right? That's how we function. That's how we work. So when he had positive response or consequence to one behavior and then got kind of shut down real quick with the other, I started seeing more of the positive coming out. And it really did work. That positive reinforcement, so one of the things I always tell people is when you're working with somebody that you can't stand, use the puppy system, train them, positive reinforcement training. I liked when you did this, praise them for this, that, and the other, because when you praise a person, they want that to happen again. That releases positive chemicals in their brain. Like,
Yeah.
yay, I like that. So
Have a
kind of
cookie.
back to
Yeah.
focus on the positive.
Yeah, no, I think it is quite an effective way of doing it. I mean, I was trying to think back to some of the ones that I had to deal with myself, and it is quite difficult in hindsight because I think the context of the organisation you're working within can have a big impact on this as
Yes.
well. So, if there is a more generally toxic culture, if there's a stressful environment, if there's some external factor that is causing some level of uncertainty, unhappiness in the business, then that can affect the way that you perceive a lot of these interactions as well, and vice versa as well. Like if everything's going swimmingly well, it's
It's like,
probably quite a lot easier, isn't it, to ignore
yeah, it's like,
the
oh,
rubbish stuff. So bear that in mind as well, because again, it adds to why they might not realise the impact they're having on you if they just,
yes.
they might not be aware, they might not have factored in that context.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love this. This comment cracked me up. I just had to throw that up there real quick. Don't argue with somebody who's a jerk. Just don't. You're not gonna win that. It's nothing good will come of that. Just don't. I love it. And it's true, the culture makes all the difference. Are you supported in dealing with this? Are you not? Another great thing that you can do is and again back to setting your boundaries, right? So first of all, set your boundaries. I kind of flew over that, but set those boundaries. Anytime somebody does something that's not right, again back to the puppy method, right? Just like, nope. And you don't have to make a big deal out of it. Just like I did, just say like, can we stay professional, please? Or, you know, hey, I don't really appreciate that. And then just keep on marching. So it's not a big deal. And so that they can just be like, oh, okay, and just, stop the conversation right there. That's one thing that you can do. And then again, positive reward is also good. Also, another thing that you can do is start to work on changing your perspective of the human, kind of like you talked about, like focusing on the good, seeing what's there. Maybe try to get to know them a little bit better as a human. Like ask them, maybe bring up some charity work you've done or something like that. Ask them what they're into. Find the thing that will let you know that they're a good human, because otherwise your brain just creates this bias of all negative information, right? And so if you only let that information thrive, then you're just going to keep feeling more and more and more negative, and it's just going to snowball. But if you find something positive about them that you can cling to and have that positive information, and then go back and visit it again and talk to them about that and kind of expand on it. Maybe they're a good parent. Maybe they rescue puppies. I don't know. I really don't know. But whatever it is that they do, maybe they donated their hair to cancer kids, or something, to make goods for cancer kids. You don't know. Find out, figure out what it is, and let that grow. So what are like, David, number one, have you ever had that experience where you're like, oh, this person's a jerk, and then you find something nice about them and you're like, oh, okay, I like that. And then
Um,
expanded advice.
Not exactly. I mean, the closest I've had was there was a couple of people I used to work with. I won't mention any names in case any former colleagues are watching. I
Please.
don't want to
Yeah.
drop anyone in trouble. Where it wasn't so much that they were a jerk or that they were a difficult person. They were just difficult to work with.
Right.
So outside of work, when we did, the company socials and stuff like that, got on fine. Actually, potentially reasonably good friends. I mean, work friends. It's not real
But
friends, is
doesn't that
it?
make a
But
difference though? Just having that connection of, oh, there's a positive
it
thing about you.
it can. It
Yeah.
can. I think for me it didn't, partly because we were so far down the track at that
Oh,
stage. The
yeah.
working relationship was strained at best, and I think there were times, and I'm sure it was true on the other side of the table as well, where no matter how well we got on about non-work stuff, they would turn around and do something that was I so fundamentally disagreed with at work for work
Yeah.
stuff that I was just like, I can't understand this. Why have you done that?
Yeah. Like, why? Why is this
Yeah,
what
like
happened? Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it's difficult, and I don't know that I have any helpful advice there because I didn't handle it very well myself.
But that's human, right? To just be like,
Yeah, I think so.
I can't stand it.
Yeah, yeah. I think in the end, I just got to the point where I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to ignore that and do what I think's best, and
See,
that's
but
all you can
okay,
do in the
but
end.
that's another thing. I'm so glad that you said that because that's another thing is that sometimes if somebody's pushing back on you and it's going to negatively affect you and your performance and your ability to do your job, just do what you know is best anyway. If they're making your life difficult, just go around and do your thing anyway and let the cards fall where they may. I actually love that you said that because it's one of the things I wanted to bring up. It's okay to still be you even if someone else isn't working well with that and vice versa. Now if somebody's just incompetent at their job, that you may need to talk to somebody about helping them get some more training, right? Because that could be it. They could just need more training. um
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
yeah, that could be it. But some people just dig their heels in and have an old way. Like I've dealt with that a lot in the hiring space and recruiting, right? And in HR. People that just dig in. Like this is the way to do it. No alternative. I'm like, no, I am telling you factually. Like here's even all the data to back you up. This is what we need to be doing. And they just dig their heels in. They won't stop. They make my job more difficult. Strangle them. I haven't yet. The day may come. I just want to say that the day may come. You'll see it in the news. Praise recruiter strangles hiring manager. Couldn't take it anymore. But
Stranger Things.
stranger, yeah, right, stranger things. And every recruiter in the world would go, "Yep, I get it."
Yeah.
Like been there, girl. I got you. I understand. I get you. Um, but in all sincerity, I know what that's like. If you're just not doing it. And so it's like beating your head against the wall, right? Sometimes a good workaround for that could be going to somebody and saying, "You're help us out. Help us sit down and mediate and not do this because it's a-" right? And it could be
Yeah.
a great leader that you know in the company, star, and you just have a coworker who can say, "Hey, you're also a problem. You come on, help out just a little bit."
Yeah.
But if it doesn't work, if they're just not doing anything, do exactly they said. Just do the best you can. And if
Yeah.
ultimately nobody else is touching this or anything, but it's hindering your ability, I would do the best thing to do is move on. And
Yeah, I think the thing that attracts me to that option and the ignore them option is that that's the easiest one, isn't it? Like it doesn't
yeah,
really, you don't have to do anything really. You just carry on and
that's
pretend
right.
it's not happened.
Let's pretend
So
it's not
that's probably why I
happening.
did it because it was path of least resistance for me.
Yeah.
So that's where I went. Yeah, I think the first resort though, if we had the last resort being walk away, leave the company, I think the first resort has to be ask for help though. Exactly as you
Yes.
said. I think you've got to find a way of doing that without appearing like you're the telling tales and running to the teacher. But I think you've
Yeah.
just got to start there, haven't you? If it's got to the point where you can't solve the problem on your own,
Right.
the logical thing is find help.
Find
So
help. And
yeah,
again, maybe starting with a non-leader or non-HR might help somebody else who's just on the project. That may be the right way to go because it doesn't feel so tattletale, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Or if you have a really great leader, just say, "Hey, can you come join this project and kind of give your thoughts on this?" And do it that way. Don't make it like this
yes,
person is being a pill. Plus, let me tell you, leaders don't like that person that's always like tattletaling on their people, like on their coworkers. That's just a fact of life.
Can confirm.
Even if you're right. Even if you're right, they just don't like it.
Sometimes,
So
especially if you're right.
yeah, sometimes that means more work for them. Uh, so thank you so very much for joining me today, David. I loved your insights because I love having people on that are so different from me because then you get the nicer, calmer, more leadership perspective versus my like bombshell. Just throw it in there and just tell them they're being interpreted. Like
Well, that is an approach to leadership, in fairness.
it's one approach that can be very effective. Um, but everybody definitely check out David. He has a phenomenal show. Tell them all about it, David. I'm gonna let you tell them about where to find you.
I should have been more prepared for that question. So, yeah, I have a podcast. It's called Leading with Integrity. We talk about leadership. I talk to all sorts of experts, such as Catherine, about topics to do with leadership, to do with management, to do with making that transition, particularly from practitioner to leader for the first time, because that is one of the most difficult parts, or yeah, probably one of the most difficult steps in any person's career journey, at least their career journey up to that point. And so that's what the podcast and that's what I am here to help people with is
Yes.
making that transition successfully.
And I will say, I love the advice that you give. I've actually learned some from your show.
Oh, thanks.
I think, yeah, it's a wonderful show. I highly recommend any leader or potential leader watch it. Even and you don't have to be a leader like manager, just a person who wants to be a leader in general.
Yeah.
And so definitely check him out. Wonderful human, great show. Thank you so very much for joining us. And remember, when you're dealing with these difficult people, break that ego down, respond with curiosity, ask for help. And remember that they don't know what they don't know. So maybe, like David said, just telling you will solve the problem. And with that, I thank everybody for joining us. Same time, same place, next weekly topic. Be great, everybody.